get lost in the vortex. If you're working with a bundt pan that you've used in the past, it's not a brand new inaugural bake, make sure there are no bits of flour that are in the creases. If you look right here, can you see that in there? I like using pan spray on bunts. It gets a really fine, even coating. I think when you brush it out with a pastry brush and oil or butter, it creates a heavier layer. That's not my style. I'm not saying it can't be done that way, just a different technique, and this is my technique. Now, I'm gonna sift in a bit of flour. For a chocolate cake, I would use cocoa powder, but for any other flavor cake, I'm just gonna use flour. This is cake flour. So I'm gonna start out, you may notice that I'm working on a giant sheet of parchment paper. It really helps catch all the mess, and then you can reclaim that flour to continue dusting as needed. So I sift this in here pretty heavily to start, to give myself a good base layer to work with. And then I pick it up and I start tapping and rotating so the flour falls and coats every area where the pan spray created a sticky surface. I don't know if you can see the difference, like where it's a real light coat here at the bottom, and then there's like a heavier coat there at the back. And we wanna kind of build up a solid coating of this. And then afterwards, I flip it over and just tap it out, because excess flour can cause just as much trouble as not enough flour. So this is perfectly and thoroughly coated. But when you're dealing with this much batter, which is a lot of batter to fill up a 10-cup pan, it takes longer to bake. So you want to kind of slow that heat conduction, otherwise it's gonna be brown to oblivion. So that's a good quality to look for in a bundt pan, nice heavy pan. Sometimes you've got a cool vintage pan and you wanna make it work, even though it's kind of a lighter weight pan that may not be as good of quality, but you just gotta learn to make it work. It's fun, some more of a risky lifestyle. Bundt pans have this really rough textured, bottom. So always put your bundt pan on a baking sheet. This is vital so that it doesn't catch on the oven rack and that it doesn't like sit unevenly or even just get bumped inappropriately. It'll also catch any overflow if you misjudge a recipe. If you're with my recipes, I've formulated them to fit, but if you're trying to adapt a recipe that's not meant for a bundt cake, sometimes it may overflow. So you wanna have something there to catch. Whoa, right down the middle. I hope somebody caught that. You have to leave the cake room to rise. The pan should not and does not need to be filled up, and maybe only fill them up 2/3 of the way. Let's put it in the oven. Boop, there it goes, the end. I did it. So once the bundt cake is cooled for a little bit, I like to come along and very gently kind of pull it away from the edges just a bit. Not a huge motion, but almost just enough to start encouraging it to think about releasing. I'm just gonna flip it straight out onto the cake stand that I'm using. Here we go, it's gonna be awkward because I'm on camera. Ba-doop. And then whenever possible, I try and like bang it a little bit so that it can release. Get up under here. Ta-da!